Well, I committed an act of ritual self-immolation this last week by watching Trump's State of the Union address, which was, as predicted, a kind of Byzantine shambles of moronic ramblings. But there was, unexpectedly, one item which took a great deal of attention. And that was his announcement that within the next 10 years he would bring an end to HIV and AIDS. Now, I don't think he knows what he's talking about. I don't think he knows anything about the pandemic. But in the United States itself, there's a significant cadre of scientists and clinicians and activists who can make that undertaking real now that they have the go-ahead. And when he said it, I was reminded of another development on the AIDS front, which is far too little talked about, and that's the quest for a vaccine. And there's considerable excitement, a crescendo of excitement growing over the prospects for a vaccine, very much in evidence last October in Madrid, Spain, at a conference of vaccines and prevention, where many scientific papers were provided, and it demonstrated that there are 2 efficacy trials now underway, that is, trials which test the effectiveness of a vaccine, and a whole panorama of other clinical trials, far more in the pipeline than has ever been the case before. Now, the first efficacy trial is based on a similar trial that occurred in Thailand back in 2009 and showed a tiny measure of success, and by reformulating the ingredients of that vaccine, they hope to show much greater success. The second efficacy trial involves 2,600 women in southern Africa, and it is funded and orchestrated by Johnson & Johnson, the drug company, and by the Gates Foundation, and by the National Institutes of Health in the United States, and, most important, by the South African Medical Research Council. And again, there's a great deal of optimism about the expected results. Now, why this sudden flurry, this sudden excitement about a vaccine? Well, it all has to do with the phrase called broadly neutralizing antibodies. I'll say it again, broadly neutralizing antibodies. I'm no scientist, I'm way out of my depth, but about a decade ago, I sat on the board of the International AIDS Vaccine Initiative when for the first time the phrase broadly neutralizing antibodies was used. Little did they then know that it would become the centerpiece of vaccine development today. And a broadly neutralizing antibody is simply a protein which is produced in the body induced by the vaccine, which neutralizes the infection. It neutralizes the cells of HIV that are in the body. It may indeed bring them to an end. And an antibody is simply the protein that does that. It's very exciting that that should now be on the mandate of the scientific community. It will take many years to develop, but in these days of doom and gloom about global public health, it is a development which deserves to be universally applauded. That was last week. I'm Stephen Lewis.